Hey there, students, and welcome back to Intensive Review. In this segment, we're going to look at USHC 1.3, which is focused on the Declaration of Independence, the principles thereof, and the background of what's going on there, and the legacy. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And first of all, we need to go ahead and kind of note that the battles of Lexington and Concord, which we mentioned in the last segment, this was April of 1775. The Declaration of Independence is in July of 1776. You've got a 15-month interval. Why is this? And in fact, that's what Thomas Paine is asking in January of 1776, when the fighting has been going on almost a full year. And he's asking, look, what's going on, people? Common sense would tell you that if you're going to be fighting, that you make a full commitment. And he's wondering, what is the deal here? And why did it take so long for the colonies to make a full commitment to the revolution? Now, of course, the answer to that is that the colonists were not unanimous about what to do. Even while there was fighting, you had the olive branch petition. A lot of people wanted to make sure that we have done everything possible, that we don't want to quite give up on being British, that this may be kind of a civil war, this could be a misunderstanding. And this is what accounts for this interval. But the thing is that we're at a disadvantage because we're not fully committed to the revolution. And finally, on July 4th, 1776, the Second Continental Congress declares the independence of the United States, that finally the last straw has been pulled or laid or put on the camel's back, or however you want to think about it, and we're finally ready to declare independence. And I'm going to read from the Declaration, read a few excerpts, and then I'm going to go into some of the background. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Now keep in mind, this is one of those Dear John letters, or you call it a Dear George letter, really. It's a breakup letter, really, that's kind of addressed to George III, the King of England. So that's why I refer to this as Dear George, so to speak. Now, John Locke was a major influencer of the Declaration of Independence. Now, first of all, you see his ideas of limited government throughout the Declaration and an appeal to natural law, that really we're looking at a higher law than the British law. We're looking at the laws of nature and of nature's God. Now, there are two audiences here. When you think about a decent respect for the opinions of mankind, first of all, an internal audience. These are people who are on the fence, or maybe they're even loyal to Britain. This is a message to the people in the colonies. Look, we can't keep sitting on the fence. We can't keep pretending that there's not a problem. We can't keep pretending there's not a multitude of problems. And so you've got this internal audience of people who are not certain that we need to declare independence. And then you've got the external audience of people in other countries such as France who may help us now that we're declaring our independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Now, first of all, we have this appeal to natural rights. John Locke, who had talked about life, liberty, and property. Now, of course, Jefferson writes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, as I've mentioned in class, the pursuit of happiness really kind of encompasses the whole idea of economic freedom. Not that you have a right to property that's yours only, but you have a right to do whatever makes you happy, to pursue happiness as you wish. The right to engage in your profession of choice without undue government interference. So the purpose of government is to preserve these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, we also see that Jefferson is affirming the right of revolution, that when governments are destructive to these ends, the people have a right to alter or abolish it, to change it or get rid of it. In this case, get rid of it. But people have a right to overthrow oppressive governments. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shewn that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, all aboard, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Now keep in mind that the colonists now, they're saying that this isn't just a little breakup over just, hey, what were you doing on Instagram, like with that girl or something like that? I saw you liked one of her photos. You got a text message from somebody or something like that. Let me check your phone. That a lot of things have happened here and that are leading to this. And there's been a long train of abuses, and we're not just leaving just because, okay? That this is aimed at those who are thinking, oh, you know, this isn't so bad. Yes, it is bad. And we're going to list the causes in just a second. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Now keep in mind this Dear George letter. The target here is George III. Now keep in mind that a lot of the conflicts between the colonists and the British government have been between the colonists and Parliament. But this is aimed directly at the king, directly at George III, and laying all of these evils at his feet. And Jefferson begins a litany, a long list of abuses of power, including he has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness the invasions on the rights of the people. He has erected a multitude of offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance, comparing these British officials to wild beasts and swarms of insects. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections, meaning slave rebellions amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Never said the Declaration was politically correct. And let's look at what the Declaration of Independence enabled the United States to do. We quote here, "These united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, and that as free and independent states, they have the power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do." We see that the United States is ready to become a real boy. The Declaration of Independence allowed the newly formed states to make a full commitment. That's what we're seeing here. We're finally seeing a full commitment to the revolution. And Congress and the states can establish now sovereign governments to conduct foreign policy and to fully govern themselves. So as far as domestic policy, the Articles of Confederation are established, which this is our first constitution and really implements the philosophy of the Declaration of Independence, that we see a decentralized government and we see a very weak almost non-existent. We don't see an independent executive branch, that any executive authority is directly accountable to the Continental Congress. And then we have foreign policy, that we make an alliance with France. Now, this is after our victory in the Battle of Saratoga, which is a turning point in that respect because the French see, well, I think they can pull this off. Now, the other thing is, why did France assist the United States? It's not because the royalist French government liked Republican ideals or anything like that. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They wanted to get even with the British. They wanted to take the colonies from the British. Remember, France had lost their colonies. This is really revenge on the British. And this is kind of how these 18th century European powers did war back then. So it's really to get even with the British. And keep in mind that the whole idea of the Declaration that all men are created equal, that we all have these unalienable rights, that there are some of these things. The northern states after the Revolution, they passed laws gradually emancipating slaves. All the states stopped supporting churches and that sort of thing, or nearly all the states, and certainly as far as religious freedom, they do that. So we see a lot of things here that are done, but at the same time, the whole idea of all men are created equal is more of a work in progress. And the last thing to note is that the Declaration of Independence is a very influential document, that it's been copied, whether verbatim or at least its ideas, in a number of instances since. One of the first instances of this was the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, which incorporates a lot of Jeffersonian ideas. Jefferson, in fact, was an ambassador to France at that time. The Texas Declaration of Independence is modeled after the American Declaration of Independence. So is the Seneca Falls Declaration in 1848 in favor of women's rights, especially women's suffrage and political equality. And then finally, the Vietnamese Declaration of Independence, which ironically was written by communists, but still used the language of the Declaration of Independence to appeal to the Western world for their anti-imperialist revolution. So that's the Declaration of Independence. You could be asked about the background, you could be asked about the content, or you could be asked possibly about the legacy. So with that, that finishes up 1.3, and we'll be moving on in just a bit to the Articles of Confederation. See you in a bit.